So I was raised in church my entire life, even from the time I was in my mother's womb. We were in church every single time the doors opened, and so naturally I had this common intellectual belief that Jesus was the Son of God and that He died on the cross, and He died on the cross for my sins. I grew up, knowing that. And I remember I was at a Bible school at the church that I grew up in, and one of my best friends at the time was with me. And at the end of the service, they did the whole close your eyes, raise your hand if you want to be saved. And the only thing I remember about that experience was her nudging me in the middle of that and saying, "Don't you want to go up there? Don't you want to be saved?" And I thought, well, yeah, I do. As I got older and I got going into my teenage years, and I got introduced really to a lot of new sin that I didn't know about before. I chased after it. I started compromising, and I went, further than I could have ever imagined that kid going. I was living in Lafayette at the time, so I started going to Lafayette Baptist Church. Shortly after Daryl had started pastoring there. And whenever I went, there was a few things going on there that happened. One, Daryl was preaching from the Bible verse by verse, and I'm not sure that had ever happened to me. My church preached from the Bible, but I never picked it up for myself. I never read it myself. I really didn't pay attention probably in the sermons, and if I did, I certainly didn't open my Bible and follow along with them. And I started doing that there when he was preaching verse by verse. And that, it came to life for the first time ever. Several years after that, I started thinking, well, maybe I wasn't really saved to begin with. Because I knew that what I had lived and the things I had done and my even salvation experience, did not look like all of these things that my eyes had opened to at this point. And I knew that I didn't understand the gospel then. And so for a few years, I battled back and forth with, am I really saved? Because I was banking on this experience that I had. And I talked to Daryl about it several times. And he finally gave me the book, Stop Asking Jesus Into Your Heart by J.D. Greear. And I read that book, and after that, I finally had peace about that. I realized it doesn't matter. I spent all this time trying to get peace from looking back at this experience that I had as a kid and trying to dive into that and figure out, did I say the right things? Did I really get saved at that point? And it occurred to me after reading the J.D. Greear book, I will never get peace and I will never get assurance from looking backwards at my experience and looking at me or what I did or what I said. The fact of the matter is, my faith is in Christ. And today I knew I was following Jesus. I knew that I had abandoned my old beliefs and I had laid my life down, and I could clearly say that old Haley died. She did not exist anymore. I had already had peace about my salvation, but it was just crystal clear. It didn't happen when you were a kid. It happened when you were an adult. So once that was so clear to me, I felt like I have never truly been baptized in a believer's baptism. So I knew the next thing I needed to do was to do that, even though I think, I really was saved probably 10 or 11 years ago. I just want to obey what Jesus tells me to do. That event that took place is not my salvation. It is not the basis of my salvation. It doesn't really matter if I said the right things during that, or if I said the prayer, if somebody else said it, or if I walked to the front, or it doesn't matter what happened. That is not what makes me saved. That experience, that event doesn't make my salvation. My salvation is, the foundation of my salvation is my faith in Christ. Not my faith in that event, not my faith in that experience, not my faith in anything I did or do currently. It is that my faith is in the gospel, that Jesus paid for my sin and I have His righteousness. My faith is in Christ. He is my salvation. He is my foundation.